Deleted session, December 13, 1972. Now, if I may presume, you always regarded this place as a place of transition. It was thought of in terms of social transition, or your place in society, and a transition in terms of your work, particularly here on Rupert's side. On his part, money, for example, through books would allow you to move. He is in a state of frozen waiting, and all of the elements given in the past have applied. The environment has gone down. The garden apartment here that he once thought of no longer exists. He thought of this place as highly desirable once in social terms, the best place you had ever lived in together. As the neighborhood deteriorated, he became more and more irate, as did you. Any thoughts of moving were always put off, until a tomorrow that has not come. Beyond the early years, he did little improving. He is highly sensitive to environment and needs. Ralph noted, suddenly louder. Say it, and do not frown, and keep writing. I am angry at both of you this evening, more at Rupert, but I cannot yell at him. Ralph said, I am writing. Ralph noted this was a real reaction from Seth. I felt the force of his momentary anger. I felt personally involved. I also thought that this might stem from Jane's expressed feelings of anger and resentment before the session, and her demands that Seth help. Perhaps this matter had its merits. They said, now, there were unfortunate aspects to which you both did react, but in the beginning, there were compensating factors in the beauty of the environment, the whole view. I did encourage you to move at one time. Now, it is the putting off of satisfactions that you want, always into the future. If you really do not care about the satisfactions, they do not matter. If you constantly want them, without making any conscious effort, then that involves a constant sense of stress. Work is involved, in that Rupert always expected you would move as soon as he made any amount of money at all. You have been also highly ambiguous in your own attitudes about your devoting. He felt you would not do anything about it. He did nothing about it on his own, except finally to rent the other apartment. But he has been holding his breath quite literally for some time. In the past, many of you here were of the same age group. Now, with younger people about the thoughts are stronger that this is a place of transition. The fact that you have not moved does reflect a lack of initiative on both of your parts. To some considerable degree, you have not been willing to count on yourself. You have negatively assumed that you could find nothing suitable, no place, that is, and resented the time involved. The change, the added space, for a while did help, you see. Rupert does feel closed in. To some extent, you also do. Not free, for example, in the summer to take advantage of the yard. One minute example, but you live with some constant aggravation. Rob noted, it's true that Jane improved considerably when we took the second apartment across the hall the summer before that. Yet I, at least, didn't connect this with her improvement. They said the two apartments helped, but in a way there is less privacy, because of the public whole. You see, you have used your dwelling place as a symbol then, which is why it becomes important. Otherwise, it would not be an issue. Robert has strongly held down any tendencies through the years to spend any money, small as it might be, in decorating, buying furniture, simply because of your joint attitudes, the feeling of transition. These tendencies have been almost completely replaced. But again, they are not unconscious. Robert felt this real thinking of them because such thoughts seemed to him to criticize your joint life style and purposes. Many then of the things that you want, quite normal things, have been always projected into the future, which no matter how he works, never comes. This also applies to you. It is simply not that much of a problem to move, to act, to make a change. It is not all that dangerous. The question, however, brings up all of your attitudes, and you also have social attitudes. Another apartment is no answer in that context. The thought of buying a house brings up strong feelings of inadequacy on your part. You feel that you should have been able to provide one for Rupert by now. He feels that you should have also, or you should have been satisfied with your work, regardless one way or the other. So the issue is highly charged whenever you discuss it. And on the few occasions when you have looked around. Rob noted, true, I always thought that my work made up for the lack of success in obtaining a dwelling we liked. I counted on the success of the work. So when the work seemed to be failing, also I was caught. They said the last episode around the corner did not apply. It was a token gesture. Each of you knew you would not live close to the river. Rupert is also afraid of changing the status quo, however, as you are. So, both of you have resented the other for not making a definite decision to move. Now, you may take your break. In many ways, you are as stubborn as he is, and regardless of what you thought, you complained quite constantly both about the job, your own work, and your dwelling. But once set upon a course, you would not change it either, and Rupert would have done anything to see you happy in that regard. He felt finally that at least if you worked full-time for yourself, that complaint would be taken care of. He considered it a practical move in the physical universe, one of the few actual changes that either of you had decided to make in all that time. Now, you are both creatures of habit, wanting feelings of security in which to work. Otherwise, you would have moved a long time ago. Because you have no family you do respond with and to your environment strongly, and that response colors your health and your work. Each person responds far more to the environment that are also created than is realized. The reason why moving often helps, and sometimes does not, is fairly obvious. A good move physically represents an inner change that then seeks a new environment in which it is materialized. Without understanding, however, you can simply project all the problems. In your case, a move would have such drastic connotations and be so symbolic that its beneficial nature is assured. Your not moving symbolically represents your not doing many things, your not facing many issues. They will become apparent the minute you even decide to move. Your particular needs, for example, the parking for class, the feelings of privacy you enjoy, yet the need also for some neighborly encounters that you also require. Rob noted, meaning me. Seth said, in your present devoting, there are many obvious issues. The two tiny kitchens show clearly that the nourishment of food has been given the last spot. In both of your lives, Rupert simply carried it to the extreme, but the inclination is obvious in your dwelling. He is afraid to move, but he will also be excited. You are also afraid to move, and both of you are wary of fitting yourselves into a new environment, and in a small but significant way, of making a new personal world. Rupert is hardly able to do housework. He does not want to do it. It is his resentment against this apartment 5. This room, Rob noted, the living room, Seth said, is the only one he regularly enters. He went like a squirrel, trying to satisfy his love of environment, changing this place about in a fury of frustration, and finally gave it up. Briefly, the new environment next door aroused him, but the apartment, while representing expansion, as I told you then, also carried a built-in boomerang, the public hall, the lack of coordination, a divided place. Of course, it had advantages, or you would not, either of you, have considered it. Both of you then have considered your dwelling place a symbol of not going ahead, of lack of initiative. Had you attempted better to coordinate the establishment, had you bought furniture, this would have made a difference. You never decided, you see, that this would be your home, for any amount of time. Now, many of these characteristics are not particularly negative at all. For example, Rupert never felt comfortable in the yard. When the Spazinians and the neighborhood ladies gathered, neither did you. The bushes at the side, however, and the garden area largely compensated, and the secret quality the corner had. Your resentment of Spazzini when he thought was projected upon him. It was anger, mainly at yourself. You felt forced to stay. Other elements were involved, but the strength of your resentment, its charge, had to do with your own feelings about yourself and this place, as did Rupert's with Piper. Dinner made a home here, and Rupert, for all of his disdain with Dinner's taste, was furious at taking Dinner's discard. Yet it always seemed impractical to do anything here, since surely you were both going to move. Now, all of these issues made him more and more susceptible to certain influences that were in the house. The influences were not dangerous unless you were in the mental mood to be affected by him. There were a series of seemingly innocuous desires, but forever put off, it seemed. Now, with people who have many other sources of amusement, occupation, family galleries, and social episodes, such things do not have such meaning. Most of your contacts are professional. You both work at home. The environment, therefore, becomes highly important. as the living medium in which you work. This is one reason why you were not as affected as Ruber. Because you were away from the environment part of the day. Do you follow me? Rob said, how about the last year? They said, up until that time, I am saying that the build-up of influences affected Ruber more because this was his only environment through those years when you were away part-time. Now that you are here, the relevance is important, but you do not have the built-up accumulation. At one time, Ruber could walk in the yard, you see, in privacy. He felt shielded. Now, you do not understand how both of your attitudes were affected, as the house itself changed and as it changed hands. You particularly felt frightened. It would be foolish to the extreme to stay here, when you are both consciously and unconsciously waiting for the bridge to be built. You felt your territory frightened as soon as the parking lot was thought of, and earlier when Spontaning first thought of selling the place. Some of the small, seemingly silly issues forever put off. A private backyard, shielding trees outside, a front and back door of your own. For Ruber a dog, both of you a unit of your own. That is, a house over which you had control. You have private rooms now in a public area that becomes more public all the time, as tenants, strangers, move in and out. For a while, the whole house had feelings of privacy when the same tenants, for example, Lucy, were here for some time. With a change in tenants, the hosts, for example, become anonymous. All of these feelings strongly operate, and on both of your parts. Ruber reacts physically. He waits physically. You do not feel safe to work. Now, in this structure, everything else is aggravated. The feelings between you and Ruber mentioned so often, for example. You both feel hampered in lovemaking. He does not feel he can let go. To raise your voice, to express aggression when you feel it, becomes a cautious endeavor. In the past, you felt surrounded at least by relative goodwill. Changing tenants alters those feelings. However, you both resented it. I will let you take a break and continue. Rob said, thank you. They said, now, the symptoms began to show when it seemed to Ruber changes should be made. In the beginning, he was caught between sheer fury and desperation. His first hardcover was out, and instead of changing the situation for the better, he was faced with a job after writing full-time. Your relationship at that time was very poor. I have given you material on it. It was a severe shock to him because of his earlier high dreams, and not to be smiled at. It frightened him. Rob said, I'm not smiling, really. Rob noted, rather, I thought at least that my expression was one of rueful recollection and regret. They said, the Seth material hardcover did not financially change the situation that much, but his classes began to bring in money. The Dreambox failure was also important financially. The money itself meant little difference to him. Where he lives with you is highly important, and if you remember, always has been. When he decided to add to your establishment, His class did pick up, and has. He wanted to see if you could afford that much more rent. Sure that if you realized it, you would see the light and decide to move. You were waiting for him to make such a decision. You both blamed circumstances, but also each other for the lack of initiative. It seemed to him that you were always going to leave your job one day and paint, but that day never came, and the two of you were going to move one day, but that day never came. So he forced the one issue. In Florida, he thought seriously of living there to make a move, but nothing came of it. Your discussion this evening at the table about finances led him deeper into those feelings he tries so hard to avoid. Here he was doing better than ever, with more money in the offing, and to what purpose? Nothing would ever change. He could not keep up financially, much less think of moving, so put it ahead in the future again. He often reads as to you, tasting your reaction. Only once did you take him up on this, so he felt you did not want to move. He is and has been terrified of making decisions where you are involved, because he feels you so resented your mother's treatment of your father. Then he becomes angry when you say, "Why don't you make a decision?" He felt you were afraid too, and if he made one and it was wrong, he did not want to take the blame. So he felt in an impossible situation, and quite consciously, when he allowed himself to become aware of his thoughts, he is afraid of hurting you, of making you move, or making you cry. Now, neither of you were ready to make such a physical change. Financially, he could have, as you can now, but you were not willing to face the issues beneath. You would have moved out of resentment, feeling for it too, and not out of understanding. Rupert's own fear, and fear for you, kept the material hidden, as did incidentally the flood. It was simply an excuse in a way, but on the other hand, Rupert recognized the difficulties during that time. Also, you both felt some loyalty to the house, and would not leave it in that condition. Rupert does not think of money, but he can produce it with great facility when he wants it for something, so he has been enraged at this useless money in those terms. Now, money for security, he does what? What this he sees after the necessities are taken care of. A suitable environment. If he is not happy today, money in the bank is meaningless to him. He also felt that a house might interfere with your ideas of work, the added responsibility, and he kept that in mind. Your mother's home would not have served your purposes, yours or Rupert's. I tell you that so that you realize you did not make a mistake. There is no doubt that it is easier for Rupert to get clear information on others. This has to do with the mechanisms of the mind. He is not involved in the same way with others. Even the information given to others, though it may be completely correct, will not be accepted unless they are ready for it. In this case, the personality has to bypass itself as much as possible, and then hope for a clear enough channel. This evening, for example, your after-dinner conversation aroused Rupert's own fears, sent him into an emotional state in which he accepted them, used them, exaggerated even his desperation, hoping to force an answer. The pendulum woke, and the ideas on the part of the initiative self began the process. But then the emotional state had to be quieted from a peak condition in order for the session to proceed. There has been deep resentment here, and on both of your parts, having to do with decision-making and misunderstandings. Now, you may take a break or end the session as you prefer. Ralph said, "We'll take a break, thank you." They said, "Now, through the years, Ruber has always been the one to watch the ads, at least in spurts, and watched your reaction. It was never enthusiastic, and you never suggested checking on the places listed. When he did so, and you did not seem enthusiastic at all. Trips," Ralph said, "vacations," they said, were meaningless in the context. They had nothing to do with moving. You knew you would return. Not only that, but if you spent much money, the possibility of moving diminished. You, Ralph noted, me, they said, have a tendency to think in terms of obstacles. Ruber allowed this to add to latent characteristics of his own. Your joint ideas then prevented you from ever thinking creatively. You never thought that moving could be fun, and that is your reality. No one else created it. It is composed of a conglomeration of quite conscious, but unsent, or rather unassembled, beliefs about yourselves, some quite contradictory, and your place in the world. You did not feel until recently that you were moving ahead in your work. The two ideas combined. The act of moving means living and beginning. While you were artistic, you both used that as an excuse. All of your attitudes will come into focus as you decide to move, and when you move. That is, I think, enough for you both this evening. So I bid you a fond good night." Ralph said good night, Seth. "Thank you very much." They said, "And do not be overly harsh on yourselves, as you both have an unfortunate tendency